This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of September 4th, 2023. And if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, first of all, thank you. But if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, then you know that on holiday weekends, I record on a Friday, and on regular weeks, I record on a Monday. So Solid Signal's offices are going to be closed on Monday, September 4th for Labor Day. And I hope that you get Labor Day off. If you have to work on Labor Day, I just want to express my extra bit of gratitude because that means you're probably doing something that's so essential to our modern world that you just couldn't take a day off. Personally, I'm recording this on Friday, September 1st, so I'm looking forward to a 3-day long weekend. If you're listening to this, you're probably listening to it after your 3-day weekend. So I hope you had a good one. That's that weird time travel thing that you do when you're recording podcasts way ahead of time. The subject for this week's podcast, it's all about channel blackouts. And, you know, I tend to not record podcasts or even write stuff about channel blackouts because, you know, they tend to go away just about the time you start talking about them. You know, that the blackout that DirecTV has had of Nexstar owned stations, which is like 160 stations or something ridiculous like that. It's been going on for a very long time, and I actually suspect it's going to be resolved sometime in the next week. There's another blackout that was just announced on Thursday, or August 31st, Thursday, August 31st, and that was that ABC owned and operated stations and also ESPN content are being pulled from Spectrum. The owned and operated stations only affects about 6 cities, but losing the ESPN content at this point and the Disney Channel content at this point, I think it affects the entire Spectrum universe, such as it may be. And the question is how long that's going to last. I would have said that it would not last very long because the two parties were still working after the contract ran out, and because I really think that things are going to get settled very soon anyway before the start of pro football season. But, you know, it's a whole new world, and these channel blackouts this year are very different from past years. It's different because pay TV companies are standing up to these content providers a lot more than they used to in the past. The pay TV landscape has changed. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to pretend that it's 2005 and everybody is just clamoring to get satellite television. I wish it was true because I think satellite television is a great product, and I think a lot of people would find it a great value if they spent some time with it. But there's streaming now, and a lot of people prefer to just stream, and totally get that. And it's I stream myself, so I'm not going to say that I don't. But I also have satellite television. But with a shrinking subscriber base, you're going to have these paid television companies like DirecTV and Dish and Spectrum not wanting to tolerate increases in costs. They are guessing, and I think they're guessing correctly, that if they keep increasing costs, that more people are going to leave. And hey, I think that what they're doing is fighting the good fight and saying, no, we will not tolerate these automatic price increases because the quality and value of the programming you're providing isn't that good. It's not unique because it's available on streaming, and the ratings are going down, especially in the case of like ABC stuff. So it's not worth more money. It's probably worth less money. And you know, when we talk for a second about ESPN, I've been talking for years about how ESPN is horribly overpriced. And it is. There was a point where it was believed that up to 1/4 of your subscription cost for pay television was going straight in the pockets of Disney, and largely because of ESPN. It's about time that somebody stood up to ABC, Disney, ESPN, and said, you know what, we're just paying too much. It's not worth it. So kudos to the folks at Spectrum for doing that. But what happens when you really stand up and take a stand like that is that sometimes these blackouts go on for a long time. Blackouts happen because the content provider demands them. They don't happen because the pay television company wants to do it. The pay television company would be more than happy generally to continue on with the same contract or to simply run the programming without a contract month to month. But it's almost always the content provider like Disney or Nexstar or whatever that says, no, you can't do that, and we're going to force you to black out. Now, why do I think that things are going to get better in the next week or two? Because we're coming up to the point where football season is right around the corner. And especially if you're if you're listening to this next week, from my point of view, if you're listening to this in the week of the 4th, then you're almost moments away from football season starting. And that means there's a lot of money on the line, especially for Nexstar, who's blacked out on DirecTV stuff, because a lot of Nexstar's stations would be carrying NFL football if they were carried on DirecTV. And because it's really very expensive for you to sign up for NFL Sunday Ticket through YouTube TV, it's more expensive than it ever was through DirecTV. You're probably not going to do it if you think that the end of those blackouts is right around the corner. So this means that there are going to be a lot of unhappy people in a lot of cities if we don't get those blackouts resolved soon. Now, are they going to put more pressure on DirecTV, on Spectrum? Are they going to put more pressure on Nexstar? No, they're probably just going to say, no matter who's the problem there, just fix it. And I think that that's a typical response. It's totally cool. And I think both sides are going to see that that's a call to actually do something. What I've read at cordcuttersnews.com and also at a couple of other sites is that Spectrum is playing a little bit of a different game with ABC. They want the Disney company to give Spectrum customers Disney Plus for free as part of the negotiation, which is an interesting kind of way of dealing with that, because Spectrum doesn't seem to be content to just become an internet company. There are a couple of other companies like Frontier, if you've heard of them, that they would just rather that you go to straight internet, and they don't want to be providing cable TV services anymore. Spectrum seems to want to stay with the cable TV model, and so they want to continue to add value. And I think that if they get what they want, that's going to work, but it obviously is something that Disney doesn't want to give them. And this whole thing really couldn't have come at a worse time for both parties if you really think about it. Disney is not doing as poorly, I think, as HBO is or Max is. But it seems like their last several projects for Disney Plus haven't been that good. Their theatrical films have not been real well received. A lot of people didn't care for The Little Mermaid, for example. And I didn't like Secret Invasion, by the way. I stopped watching. It's one of the rare shows I stopped watching it after one episode, gave it a try, and just decided it wasn't for me. I am watching Ahsoka, which is okay, but not great. And I think that that's kind of the story of Disney lately, is they're okay and not great. And yet they're raising prices. All of the streaming companies are raising prices, which makes it a really much better time to evaluate pay television, as long as pay television can keep prices under control. I think the folks over at DirecTV and Dish, the ones that I'm aware of, are doing everything they possibly can, not only to keep things under control, but to add more value. You're starting to see new features roll out onto DirecTV products. If you've got a Gemini, then you're seeing Sports Central, which is a new thing that the Gemini will do that the other Genie clients won't do. It will help you find sports even if they're not on broadcast, which is pretty cool. And I think that it's an honest recognition of the market as it exists today. But I think that we're going to see a bit of an inversion in the next year, especially if these content providers keep asking for more and more money for less and less programming. I think that we're going to see that pay television becomes the real value option and streaming is more of a premium kind of thing. With, obviously quite a change from 5 years ago when streaming was thought of as the low-cost option. It's always time to re-examine this sort of thing. It's always good to do it because you may realize that you're paying too much for something and you're not paying enough, or you're paying an appropriate amount for something that you use all the time. Anyway, that's about it for me on the Solid Signal podcast for this week. As I always say, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Makes me look good to my bosses. Shop at solidsignal.com, the sponsors of this podcast. Find everything that you need to live your best digital life. And if you need even more help than that, give us a call at 888-233-7563. I hope that you had a great Labor Day weekend. I am planning on having a good Labor Day weekend, and I will talk to you again next week.